Hey, can you
Hey,
hear me?
Mike.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Awesome. Oh my God, that was I didn't know what was going on, and it was because anyways, I had to Zoom is constantly updating, and I had
Right?
to restart my computer because it was not working. So before we talk, because I know I always start to talk with people and I'm like, shit, we gotta do that again. So let me set this up.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be live in a second. Mm-mm-mm-mm.
Sorry for all the glare behind me. I thought, oh, I better go sit near the bookcases, but
No, you're perfect.
otherwise you have a boring white wall view behind the desk. So
Perfect. All right.
keeping with the theme. Oh, I see a little easel for the book.
I was downstairs cleaning up my basement, and I'm like, I don't even know where it came from. I'm like,
Ooh,
and this was literally like 10 minutes ago. So I'm like, sweet,
ah,
I'm grabbing it.
perfect.
All right, let's see. Live. And I think. Okay, here we
Thank you for
go.
giving me an excuse to put something on that's not like a sweatsuit.
It's so funny. So it's the one time a week that I put pants on. And Tim is like, why? They can't even see. I said, I don't know. It makes me feel like I'm like getting ready for it or something. So
Yeah.
literally, I put on a pair of jeans and not my flip flops for this each week, just cause. So one
I,
thing, it's just something to do.
right. I am wearing slippers, but
Well, there you go. All right, Ashley, thank you so much for being on this episode. I think I'm on episode like 5, maybe.
oh, nice.
Yeah, and I am booked. I am booked up until October,
That's awesome.
and I already have some people for next spring because I'm going to take a couple months off. So it's crazy. It's nuts.
Cool. Well, this
Yeah.
is a lot of work for you, I'm sure.
Well,
To
you know what? The work is just the prep the day of or the day before, and it takes me an hour really just to say, like, if we're going to talk about something, I want to know what page to go to. But other than that, that's why I did it, is because I'm reading it anyways. I want to talk. I've always wanted to talk to people about my books. And then when Scott started his thing, I'm like, this will be perfect. This is an easy way to do it. And and it doesn't add a ton of work. I mean, I'm learning the technical side of just like throwing out little marketing things here and there, which take no time. So yeah, I'm really lucky in that this and the 1 hour prep the day before or the day morning is it. So yeah, I've been lucky. It's not bad, and I'm reading them anyways. I love that part of it. And I'm trying to grab people. Like, I saw you had read this. I saw you posted your own, or you posted to me, hey, I'm working so I've been doing kind of that thing. If I've posted a book I've read, I'm kind of going back to those people like, hey, I saw you read this. Do you want to talk about it? So
okay. I was wondering if I had mentioned it previously on social media, and maybe that's why,
yep.
or this is just a crazy coincidence.
No, you
So
mentioned it.
I had read about, I don't know, maybe 3/4 of it months ago.
Yep.
Maybe it was even last year. I don't remember, but it was when it first came out in hardback, and there were hundreds of people on the waiting list at the library. So, due to poor time management, I didn't finish it before it was due, but I felt like, man, I can't keep a book that hundreds of people are waiting
Right.
for. So, this was actually an opportunity for me to finish it.
I think that was your post. I think that was actually your post that said, hey, I want to finish this book. And I'm in the same boat as you. Is I started reading it, I put it down, and I think I put it down because this thing had started a couple months ago. And I read like a bunch of books at once. I can't do that anymore, obviously. And I put it down. And so if I didn't have you doing this, it would have been, I don't know when I would have finished it. And I don't about you.
Neither.
I'm so glad I did. You know what I mean? There were some,
Yeah.
you don't find as many turns in a nonfiction book like I found in this one. But before we get there, please, and I stole this from Scott, introduce yourself.
Sure. Okay, so my name is Ashley Rogers. I live in Portland, Oregon, but I'm from Cincinnati. So, Mike, you and I know each other from Nicholson's almost 20 years ago.
Don't even say it. I know,
Crazy.
it's
Yeah.
crazy.
And I think I probably haven't seen you in person since
20 years ago.
2005, maybe? End
Yep.
of 2005? I think that's when I left.
Was that when you left? Okay, I was going to say, when did you move? So yeah, that's about, I think I left Nicholson's not too long. Well, we all did. You know, there's a phase where we all kind of left around the same time. So the book we're going to talk about today is Say Nothing. It's by Patrick Radden Keefe. And I'm going to read this cover just because I've been doing that lately. I'm not going to read the whole thing because this one's long, but I just want to give people an idea of what it is that we're getting into. In December 1972, Jean McConville, a 38-year-old mother of 10, was dragged from her Belfast home by masked intruders, her children clinging to her legs. They never saw her again. Her abduction was one of the most notorious episodes of the vicious conflict known as the Troubles. Everyone in the neighborhood knew the IRA was responsible, but in the climate of fear, paranoia, no one would speak of it. In 2003, 5 years after the Good Friday Accord brought an uneasy peace to Northern Ireland, a set of human bones was discovered on a beach. McConville's children knew it was their mother when they were told of a blue safety pin that was attached to the garments. With so many kids, she had always kept it handy for diapers or ripped clothes. It's funny, Ash, because I've never, before I read a book, I usually read this. I read the back or the cover. But I've never gone back and read it after I've read a book. And now that I've been doing it, they're always, they're wrong. Like, I'm wondering who writes these, because it's like, did they read the book? I mean, it's small little things.
Right.
Small little
Minor inaccuracies.
Yes. But why? Why, if you got a paragraph to write, why are you going to be, I mean, I've noticed this is a third book in just 5 books that I've read where it's like, I mean, and I'm just going to point these out for people that have read it and you would read it. They knew it was her mother when they were told a blue safety pin was attached to the garments, right?
Right. When in actuality, they asked.
They said, yeah, the brother said, hey, I want to know this. The other part I had, when they found a set of bones was discovered on a beach, they knew it was theirs. And it's like, that's a round, really weird way of putting it. Like, they were, I don't know. I found issue with that. I thought it was funny.
Right. It implies that her remains were stumbled upon rather than, which they ultimately were, but it leaves out the whole process of the failed search.
And the bulldozers and the pulling up the ground. Exactly. What made you, why did you pick up this book in the first place?
It got a lot of press. So it was on my radar. I mean, I felt like I was being bombarded with reviews of it.
It was everywhere. I agree,
right?
Especially somebody that follows the Troubles. I don't know if you knew this, but I worked business world for a while, and then when I decided to get out of it, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I wanted to be an Irish history professor.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, when I started reading again in college, that was all I really focused on were the Troubles, the Irish Civil War, the Easter Rebellion. I picked my phone number, which is still to this day, I won't give it, but 1916 at the end, which is almost done. I have hundreds of books on Ireland. Yeah, so it's really weird to I guess the thing is, to me, and I think we saw a lot in this book, was, man, when I'm reading about this stuff in literally, well, let's say it started to wrap up around, and the Good Friday Accord was 1999, I just felt like that was the end of a lot of stories. And when you read this, you realize, man, there was so much going on recently. Well,
right.
last 20 years. And I thought I had read everything. I actually stopped kind of reading about the subject because to me, it was almost history. It was almost all gone and in the past. And when you read something like this, man, it really wasn't. It was a lot going on last 10 years, you know, especially
Now,
with these people's lives.
I know you went to Ireland years ago I think when we worked at Nicholson's.
Yeah, another bartender, Josh, and I went. I'd gone 3 times in 5 years.
Did
I went
you
there.
have an opportunity on any of those trips to go to Belfast?
You know, it wasn't. No, it, again, I looked at it like it was over with. And Belfast is just known, if you go to Ireland, and you go to the West Coast, and I know people will probably be like, "Oh, you're crazy." I hear Belfast is beautiful, but a lot of the time, the West Coast is where I wanted to kind of hang out. These small towns, and if you go up north, it would just seem like far away. And Belfast is very industrial and whatever. It was just one of those things where I was like, "Man, I would have loved to have gone and seen it." You know, of course, it was a war zone, but it just seemed like, to me, it was like, oh, that would have been so interesting. And now, I guess that's part of why I'm saying this. I'm kicking myself. You're exactly right. It's almost like, man, why didn't I go up there then? I mean, these people that I was reading about and looked up to, one point or another, we'll talk about that too. Um, they were still there. They're still living and breathing and still doing the things they cared about at that point. And yeah, no, I never made it up. So what did you know about the Troubles before you read the book?
I would say probably a decent amount. I mean, certainly not as much as is contained in the book, but I feel like there are two immigrant communities in the US that are just like very passionate about their heritage.
Mm-hmm.
Italian Americans and Irish Americans.
Shove
So
it in your face. Yes.
yeah. So I mean, and I don't think that other people of other backgrounds don't tend to have the same zeal or fervor. Like,
I agree.
can't think of any like Swiss Americans who are.
Right. Right.
So I mean, it's just something that you always knew about. I think growing up in the '80s here, like.
But that's you, though. I think that's you, though. You want to be informed, because if I ask 9 out of 10 Irish Americans that love their heritage still about the Troubles, they're not going to know anything. I mean, honestly,
Interesting, huh?
I mean, from what I've found, you know, they might say, oh yeah, the Protestants live in the North and the Catholics live in the South. You know what I mean? But to know much more than that, I have found that most people I've talked to, oh yeah, there's a conflict there. The Catholics hate the
Huh?
Protestants, but that's it. You know, I
Interesting.
don't
Well,
see nobody I can have a talk with. I don't think.
Well, mentioning the religious aspect reminds me, as pointed out in the book, which seems completely accurate to me, is that though two two groups from different religions fighting each other, it wasn't really about religion at all. In fact,
Yeah,
most of the people mentioned, I mean, the author points out, so and so was lapsed, so and so was a non-believer, blah blah blah. So
definitely.
it was to I think we get a simplified version of it by always thinking like, oh, this was about religion
Yeah,
when it's
just
about
like
geography.
the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It's not really about religion. It's about socioeconomics. You know, which brings us to our next point. This whole thing, the Troubles, started with socioeconomic differences. And for those people that don't really have followed it yet, the north part of Ireland and the Republic of Ireland split in 1921. Um, the northern part stayed with Great Britain, and the Southern Republic became its own country. And the northern part, Queen Elizabeth II, Queen Elizabeth II, Queen Elizabeth I started moving Scottish Protestants in the 1600s, and those Protestants still live there today. They made up the majority. And when they split Ireland in the 1920s, that majority had a lot of the wealth and the privilege due to its long history. And so when they split, the Catholic minority were definitely treated as second-class citizens, not a lot of rights, got, you know, it's a very different country than the United States, but there's housing boards and how you get a house and waiting lists and all these types of things. And we get to the 1960s, and they see the civil rights movement in the United States, and the Catholics in Northern Ireland say, we're going to fight for our rights, essentially. Quick 30-second version. So what happened there? What took us from the civil rights movement, if you remember this part of the book? What was the transition to what we see the IRA as mainly in this book, this feared terrorist group?
Gosh, okay. You're probably going to put this much more eloquently than I, because I can't recall a single.
No, there wasn't.
In the book?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there wasn't the kind of violence that was. The 60s weren't a particularly violent time, from what I gathered.
No. And there's a point at Read in the 60s that blew my mind. It said, up until 1968, the IRA was giving its weapons away to a group I never even knew about, was the some Welsh independence movement. And they were actually saying, well, we're done here. So they were giving their weapons away till 1968. So you're exactly right. It was more of a peaceful movement till then.
Speaking of Welsh independence, that reminds me, I don't know if you're aware, but in Northern Wales, there are still, I knew some Welsh people when I lived in New York. So this is info from 20 years ago. I don't know how accurate it still is.
Seems like yesterday, though.
Right. Truly does. So the people I knew were from Northern Wales, and they said that there were establishments you would walk into in Northern Wales, like current day, back then, and if you spoke English, you would be completely ignored. So there is a nationalist element in the North. A lot of people primarily speak Welsh. There's a rejection of English. Probably, a similar situation.
That's the one thing they're really holding on tight to. And the Irish did that too. When I was in Ireland, the West Coast, the way West Coast, the population spoke Gaelic. Of course, they spoke English, but it was trying to just hold on to the Gaelic. And any street sign or road sign that was printed with the English and the Gaelic, they would spray paint out the English. And that was up until 2006, and it may still be that way. But again, I can't speak to that. But yeah, and that's the one thing they want to hold on to is they see Anglicization, whatever, Anglicization. What word am I looking for?
Anglicization.
Yeah, right. Of everything, and so the one thing they want to hold on to is their language. But yeah, you just don't hear about the Welsh independence movement very often.
Pretty small country too.
Pretty small, yes. And so we have this going on in there, and the Protestant majority pushes back. We hear about a major story of a march for civil rights that gets stopped pretty violently by the Protestant protesters, and this changes a lot of people in the movement. A lot of people that were just all about peace and trying to be nonviolent, following Dr. King, decided, you know what, this isn't going to work. So they have a history of the Irish Republican Army, which goes back, honestly, you could take its lineage to the 1850s, but really when it gets strong is the independence movement. Michael Collins, 1914 on. And then they want to go back to that history. The Irish Republicans don't go along with it, the IRA, so they have to create a splinter group, and they're called the Provos, the Provisional IRA. And a lot of these people join this group. Two people in particular were Dolores Price and Marion Price. Do you want to talk about either one of those ladies for me? What do you think about that?
Sure. Okay, well, as I mentioned when you first asked if I wanted to do this book in particular with you, you may recall I said, and one of the main figures was married to Stephen Ray.
Right. And I didn't know who Stephen was till I Googled him from your post.
And I bet
then I knew who he was.
Him, you were like,
of course. Right.
Yeah. And so, to read so many references in the book to her going places and being treated like a film star, and just the fact that she's so famous, in England as well for taking part in the car bombings in, was that 73?
Yeah.
72?
72, 73. Yep. 72, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bloody Friday, did they call that? Or was that a different one?
Uh,
So many bombings.
right. Hard to keep track of them.
Right.
I was in London for a month the summer of 1993. And
Oh,
I
wow.
remember talking with the family I was staying with about the IRA. And let's just say they were not fans at all.
No, not at all. No, it's scary. It'd be
Yeah.
scary. Yeah. Yeah. When I was, we'll get to Jerry Adams in a minute, but I had a picture of Jerry and I in my house, and the people next to me were from Northern Ireland. And the man literally chased me to my kitchen and wanted to beat me up in my own house.
Okay, so how did you meet Jerry Adams?
So I was really into this whole stuff. Like I told you, it was what I wanted to do. I went to Xavier and I told the professors there, hey, I want to teach Irish history at a college level, maybe do high school, and I said, but I need your direction. And they really helped me out to see that being a college professor is not what it seems. It's a lot more difficult and not a lot. You don't get a lot back from it. So
I can speak from experience as a former adjunct.
it's not right. It's not right. It's not right. We are screwed up in this country where you have people walking away from that. But so I walked away. Anyways, when I was at Nicholson, I was still following what was going on. Like I said, it was kind of trailing off. And Jerry came to the Peace Bell in Northern Kentucky.
Oh.
He was ringing the Peace Bell. So I just made sure that I was there. And actually, do you remember Mike Altman?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Mike and I wrote for his political newspaper. And I was going to do a story on it. I remember that. And then I didn't end up doing it just because we figured that not a lot of people knew what was going on. So we kind of nixed that idea. So but Jerry, I'll tell you, it was cool. We're going to talk about who Jerry is in a minute.
Oh my
Jerry,
God, baby face.
And I know, little boy. Jerry was awesome because that was before digital cameras. And we could kind of tell. I asked somebody to take it for me. And we could kind of tell it didn't work. I can't explain how. We just kind of could tell. And Jerry looks at me, and he was very nice. And there were a lot of people wanting to kind of do it. And he goes, do you want to try it again? And I'm like, please. And he did it. Thank God, because the first one didn't work.
Yeah.
So anyways, just my own direction. And this is really odd for me, and I think this is what the big part of the book is. I almost felt like an insider because I follow Jerry Adams' path, which first you sound like, what the heck are you talking about? Well, I started getting into this when I was 20 years old, and at that age, and it was still in the middle of a lot of, oppression, and it was the first time where I could kind of empathize and put myself in somebody else's shoes. And I'm like, wait, but these people are just like me. They're white Catholics, even though I'm not Catholic anymore. Same thing. They were getting oppressed for who they were. And I look back at my great grandparents. And anyways, I could really relate. So I felt this need like they did, these people that wanted to go back to this, hey, violence or nothing, we're going to be this is going to be a revolution. I really, you kind of hate to say it when you're older, but I really supported that idea. I was really into it. I actually became a part of the Ancient Order of Hibernians, but then I became a part of, you might have read it in the book, they just mentioned it once, NORAID. Have you ever heard of that? Did you remember it in the book?
It's not ringing a bell. Tell me more.
Because he mentions it just once in the book. But NORAID was not Irish Northern Aid for Ireland.
Oh, yes. Okay, I do remember. That's actually towards the end. Because
yes. So I actually was a member of that for a while, which probably, if post 9/11 life, probably is not legal.
Right.
Not that I did it.
Watch list.
Right, exactly. But just to give you a state of mind of where I guess the reason I'm telling you this is because we're going to talk about it in a minute, but I could feel the transition that Jerry went through. And I feel what he did, in that when you're younger and you want to fight, and then when you're older, like I'm a pacifist, I'm 100% pacifist. I hate war for any reasons. I hate guns. And I think Jerry came around that way too. So let me introduce for the people Jerry Adams. Jerry Adams was a main character of the book. He, you tell me who he is, Ash. Who is Jerry Adams to you?
Well, I think he was a reviled figure outside of supporters of the IRA because of his very close ties to terrorism. Likely, is he fooling anyone by claiming
No,
he's
he's
IRA?
not fooling anybody. And
Come on.
that's the thing. That's what makes you, and for me and everybody that supports Sinn Féin and everybody in Northern Ireland, we know it.
And I mean, not
but
only was
can
he
he say anything?
he was like the leader.
The leader, right? And but I guess my thing is if he admits it, and I get where Brendan Hughes is coming from. I get where Dolores is coming from. I'd be angry too. But if he takes 1 second and admits that he had that role, he doesn't get to meet with President Clinton.
Right, he could be prosecuted.
Yeah, but he doesn't get what he accomplished, which is the Good Friday Agreement. You know, I think there's an interesting part of the book, and I think there's just so much of the book for those of you that are following along. I apologize, we're jumping around, but there is an incongruency. I put it here as a counterintuitive part where we need, of course, you always need maybe a little bit of a threat of armed resistance to get peace sometimes. But the part that both sides had a paramilitary element pushing people to follow the political process is what made it happen in Northern Ireland.
Right, yes.
At 325, let me just read that part real quick. It says, is that the right page? The existence and cohesion of these paramilitary groups since their ceasefires has played an important role in enabling the transition from extreme violence to political progress. It's asserted.
Right. This kind of fascinating. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right. This was a counterintuitive finding and a subtle enough point that it was overlooked in the storm of press coverage that greeted the report. The continued existence of Republican and loyalist outfits didn't hurt the peace process, it helped it. It was because of this authority conferred by these persisting hierarchies that such groups were able to influence, restrain, and manage their members. The report maintained nothing that there have been only limited indications of dissent to date. So you have these organizations, both loyal and Republican. You know that Jerry Adams isn't just a political figure, but he's probably still the head of the IRA, and he will have you killed if you speak out or don't follow the line. He's a gangster. That's kind of what led us
to never get his own hands dirty.
Yes.
Right? I mean, no accusations of him actually committing any murders personally, just directing them.
And I think, I'll tell you, if you ask me tomorrow, I might have a different answer. How do you feel about Jerry? I mean, how are your, do you think the end justifies the means? Do you think that he's a slimy politician? Do you think he's all for it just to, I think Marion Price says at one point, now that you have your houses and your nice car or whatever, was this your goal? What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of conflicted because, like you, when I was younger, I was probably much more supportive of acts of terrorism in the name of justice, let's say. Now, I mean, how do you justify killing people, especially civilians? And like you, I'm a pacifist as well, and I can't think of a single war I think it's a good idea to get involved in.
Right.
So I don't know. I have mixed feelings about him.
I did, and I too. If I didn't have the progression that I have, but he did what we did. We both did that. We both went through that, and he was 19 years old, and he lived growing up in. And I tell people to read this. Just it wasn't just like he decided, just like somebody online that wants to go join ISIS. I mean, he grew up with this in his face, with persecution and oppression in his face, and seeing poverty all around him, unfair treatment. And so these people were led to the civil rights movement and get nothing there, actually get pushed around in violence from them. Then the British bring in the freaking army, and they make it a police state, a militarized state. And then these people say, fine, we're going to fight fire with fire. And so Jerry Adams is this figure that took control of the IRA, does not admit it, ordered killings, ordered a very structured unit, ordered people to go on hunger strike for different things, and then decides at one point, when Bobby Sands dies, becomes elected to Parliament and then dies, he says, you know what, we got to bring politics into this. And then he goes the political route. Well, a lot of those people since saw Jerry's move as saying, well, now you get to wipe your hands clean.
Right.
And I did all this dirty work. Like,
yes. And Brendan Hughes. I mean, look, they both drank and drugged themselves to death in a likely effort to
depression
themselves to what they've done and what they perceived as failures despite their efforts.
Well, and you got to think too, if again, I'll put myself in those shoes. Let's say I was a soldier when I'm 22 doing the freedom fight. You don't want to be 45 and now being told you were wrong. You know, you want to be left, God, I'd rather have died a martyr at 22 then, you know what I mean? And
right.
I think that's what was happening to them. Obviously, they're becoming this pacifist state of mind. I think there's a point where Price even starts to say, man, nothing is worth these killings anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And she did them. And Brendan, I don't know if he came to that point, but they were growing up similar to us, saying, I don't know what's worth it. But they did say this. I think it was, if they did not do the killings, and you may agree or disagree, I think they would have been on Jerry Adams' page. What do you think?
Gosh.
Maybe not Brendan. Maybe not Hughes.
Yeah, I think, well, you know, and it sounds like to some degree Dolores Price remained a pretty militant Republican to the end of her life. So, but yes, I would say she did renounce the violence, and so maybe was, you know.
Maybe would have went the other way if she didn't do so much, right?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, to be in jail for what, 7-8 years too? I mean,
and just to live the life that she lived too. You know, married to a prominent guy. She was living in the upper echelons of society. You know, I think she could have met the Queen if she didn't bomb England a couple times, right? So here's what she wrote.
That's not really funny. But...
No, but you're right. Yeah. She knew that the organization had come to an improbable conclusion that the mother of 10 was an informer, Miss McConville. Even if the charge was true, and Price believed that it was, she doubted deep down that the penalty was appropriate. What warrants death? She said to Maloney, who was an interviewer. I have to ask myself, what warrants death? She continued. I certainly knew nothing of the nature of the children or the number. I knew none of that, and it had been a situation where I was brought into the discussion of what happened. I might have advocated a lesser punishment. So this was her speaking in her 40s, looking back to having been a part of the murder of Miss McConville. And I think that if she hadn't been a part of that and other murders, I think she might have been. She hated Jerry Adams at this point, for Jerry just saying, hey,
yes,
I had no part of that. That wasn't me. Don't know what you're talking about. And just for those of you who haven't read the book, we're not going to give the whole book away. He ordered that killing. You know, he ordered.
And in light of what, right? Oh, sorry. In light of what you and I know about the spoiler, I mean, how may that have affected Dolores' later rationale for saying that she did continue to believe that Jean was indeed an informant.
A tout.
Pardon?
I've never heard that word before.
Tout.
Have you ever heard that before?
I've never heard that before. I did know grass and supergrass.
I didn't know those either.
Supergrass is a band that was popular, like, I don't know, 25 years ago, and I never knew where their name came from, and I happened to read it somewhere. So yeah, not common terminology in the
No,
States, but
a tout is an informer, and you cannot be an informer for the against the IRA, or you will get it.
they'll
And there's a
getcha.
pretty interesting informer. That's a whole side story, but Steak Knife was a pretty interesting character.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go. One more little thing I want to talk about. So the family. Let's just tell people really quick. We talked about Jerry and the head of the IRA. We talked about Dolores probably had a role to play in this murder of a mother of 10 children. Real quick, tell us what happened. Why was she murdered? How was she a tout? What was the story of Jean
What
McConville?
a tragic story.
Horrible.
Okay, so she was recently widowed. She and her 10 children, I forget what the age range was, but
I mean,
only
it
the
was
oldest
young.
one had a job.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
if I had to guess, I'd say like
six.
right. And I think there was even a younger one. I think there was like a 4 or 5-year-old.
Oh, there might have, maybe there was a younger girl. I know that
Mm-hmm.
the two youngest boys were 6-year-old twins when she disappeared. So she and her family, it's just crazy to think how people were forced to move around
Yeah,
constantly.
because you had housing was
Chaotic.
so limited, and it was so shoddy. No indoor plumbing in a lot of this. So poor. The housing authority of the country of Northern Ireland directed where you got to live, and they have to build apartments and buildings and say, "Oh, you got one." But the story, which was funny to me, other Catholic families would move in and squat. And
Right.
even if you got directed to take it from the government, they'd be like, "Sorry, we're here first. We need a house too." And then you'd be like, "Damn." But go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah.
Tell me about Jean.
So they moved to public housing, which I'm sure is much like public housing in the States.
Section 8. Yep. Same everywhere, pretty
That
much.
we have come to realize that these massive structures with no green space and places for kids to play, for social engagement, those places are terrible. In fact, I think that the building they lived in may have been torn down. Did I read that?
It is.
Anyway,
It
the
has
suspicion was, okay, that Jean McConville was concealing like a radio or
been.
a radio transmitter. It looked like a walkie-talkie when they showed
Right.
the photo.
Right.
It was an example. And yeah, that she was informing on her neighbors.
Right. She lived in the Divies Flats, which was famous. Just pretty much everybody was there was poor Catholic. And, you worked along with the IRA, even if you weren't a member. If you were a member, you didn't talk about it. But she had grown up Protestant, but her husband was Catholic. And Protestants said, "We don't want you around here." So she kind of had to move to the Catholic side. She was poor. Her husband died. But yeah, and she wouldn't play along. She didn't want to play the pass the gun
Pass the
game,
gun.
right? And so her neighbors were looking at her like, who do you think you are? And so we don't know. We don't know how true the stories are. One story her kids remember was that a British soldier was shot in front of their place and she helped him out. So they wrote something on her door like Brit lover, something along the lines. And then the IRA found out she might have been communicating with being a spy, a tout for the British. And the kids say no way. I mean, there's 10 of them. I mean, it's part of my thing is like I could see her doing it. She needed a little extra money. The one thing that stood out was when she was in the lineup. That really kind of did it for me. Do you remember that part? She did the lineup where
Yes.
slit.
Yes. Now, was that truly her? I mean, it sounded like someone said, "Oh, I recognized her slippers," but
Right. And it's funny. I don't know who was that told us that story, but that's kind of what sealed it for me. Was that it said it was her? I don't remember, something about that story. Just was like, okay, now I kind of think she did it. But then, if you need extra money, she's got 10 kids to feed.
Right? Yeah.
That's the other thing. Like,
maybe that justified the means.
Right. You're not Catholic. You grew up, you hear both sides of this story. I don't want to deal with this mess. You want to give me a couple extra bucks to just, give you a little bit of, what information am I going to give you? I'm not like knowing their big secrets or where they're going to bomb. I'm just telling you, hey, they're on the corner here or whatever.
Right.
So I could see that too. So anyway, she gets taken away. What happens to the family, Ash?
So no one reported her missing, which is crazy.
Awesome neighbors. I don't care what's going on.
Right. Leave 10 little feral children on their own. And so, yeah, the kids were on their own for, I think, a few months at least.
Did you, I don't know about you. When I read a nonfiction book, I'm like this. And Kim's like, what are you doing? I'm reading and I'm like throwing the book down. I'm on YouTube trying to find any video about this. I want to see the people. I want to hear them talk. Did you watch the video of the kids?
I didn't watch a video of the kids, but I went down many rabbit holes reading this book. Yes.
Watch the kids, man. Oh, it's so bad. It's heartbreaking. They're dirty kids. They have an older sister looking over them. They're crawling over each other.
This is the news interview?
It's a news interview.
Okay.
Yep. They might have had a picture in the book, or maybe I'm just seeing it from remembering it online.
Yeah, there was a photo of
so from the photo in the book, it's on YouTube. So these kids are getting interviewed. They're pretty much like, hey, your mom's gone. What are you doing while she's gone? Oh, she's been gone for 10 days. Yeah, I'm making do. I'm 18 raising all my brothers and sisters.
Right.
Crazy. And nobody stepped in finally because these kids didn't know she was dead. Their hope was she's going to be back. And they were holding out hope. And then the state came in and separated them. Sent them off
to be sexually abused in homes.
Every abused in every way. Yes.
Right.
And I went and did the same thing, the rabbit hole. I'm looking up all these places, like where these boys went, and man, nightmare.
Yeah.
And God, to lose your mom, your family, and then you're a newcomer because a lot of these orphanages, these kids grew up there, so they were the new kids.
Could you imagine living in an orphanage at all?
Especially no. Funny story, not a funny story. My uncle.
Hang on, sorry, I'm listening.
You're good. No, you're good. My uncle. My two uncles were adopted from Ireland. From the story of 1950s, 60s. Unwed mothers were kind of sent to these convents to have children, and then they put them in orphanages, and then there was a profit motive too to kind of give them to American families to adopt. Well, my grandparents, God love them, they adopted two Irish boys. And so while I'm reading this book, my uncle was born in 1959, and he was born in Newry. And I said, do you understand? You were the perfect age from the perfect place to be one of these fellas in this book. I mean, this would have been you. But he kind of led me through. He said, well, my mom wasn't from Newry. She was from Dublin, but Newry was the place in Northern Ireland where you kind of went to have the baby.
Okay.
And then he said he would have grown up in one of those orphanages. But, and I asked him what the motive was. He's like, I don't know the motive. But he was stolen by a Catholic priest.
Oh.
Stolen, brought back down to Dublin to be adopted. And I said, well, what was the motive? Is the motive to save you from that life or to... I'm sure there's a profit motive there too. Sure. I'm sure there was a big profit motive to, I'm sure American couples were given some money to get these babies. So he obviously doesn't know. Go ahead.
My boyfriend and his sister, not bio sister, were both adopted from South Korea, actually. And,
so you might know too. Is that too? Is there money involved, or is that just?
So this couple whose last name was Holt started an international adoption agency, maybe as far back as the 50s, could have been the 60s. But when South Korea was still essentially a second world country, there were tons of international adoptions. So Trevor and his sister were adopted in the mid-80s. And I would say from the 70s through maybe even the late 80s, it was very, very common for South Korean kids to be sent abroad.
Right. And I'm just wondering though,
poverty at that time.
Yeah, but I'm wondering if this, because then you see these different states. You see China become one. You see Russia become one for a while.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering the motive, one, to help these kids. Of course, that's there. Thank God.
Yeah.
I got my uncle, but there has to be. I'm wondering if this priest did it. I guess that just did he do it for some other reason too? Was there big money in it?
Well, and
There
it's
could have
kind of,
been.
I bet it's very similar to Ireland in that it was very much frowned upon to be an unmarried mother.
Yeah, yeah. They made them go many
Right.
places, right?
Yeah, and from what I've read, a lot of South Korean women were forced to give up
Hmm.
babies
Yeah,
against their will.
right.
So
Yeah,
it's,
crazy.
it is pretty crazy.
It is, and it's still going on everywhere. So let's bring us to today. So if you've not read this book, we're very surface level, which is all you can do in this time. But I just want to read one thing that I was talking about with Jerry Adams before, whether he was an evil person or a hero. 345. So just to kind. All right. So wait, that's where Brendan Hughes gets left behind. He felt that he got left behind. Okay. It is not it is not hard to sympathize with Hughes emotionally, but politically it would be folly not to sympathize with Adams. He may have possessed a sociopathic instinct, I agree with that, for preservation, and there is something chilling about how Adams, securing his face on his place, does not cast so much as a backwards glance to those comrades like Hughes who he left behind. But
Hmm.
really, it was history that was leaving Hughes behind. Northern Ireland had suffered enough. Whatever callous motivations Adams may have possessed, and whatever deceptive machinations he might have employed, he steered the IRA out of a bloody and intractable conflict and into a brittle but enduring peace. I thought that was just, when I read that, I'm like, dang, that's exactly, I think that's it. I think that nails it for me.
So they got peace, but they didn't get to return to Ireland.
Ireland. No, no, not yet. No, this whole Brexit thing, though, they're saying that this could be the closest thing um, they get to it. But here, and not to just keep reading, but Belfast today, more than 90% of the children in Northern Ireland continue to attend segregated elementary schools. Bus stops in some parts of Belfast were informally designated Catholic or Protestant, and people would walk an extra block or two to wait at a stop where they wouldn't fear being hassled. Hundreds of Union Jacks still fluttered in Protestant neighborhoods, while Catholic areas were often decked out with their tricolor and their Palestinian flags. A gesture of solidarity, but also a signal that, even now, many Republicans in the North regarded themselves as an occupied people. So, yeah, I mean, you're right. They're going through peace. They're not killing one another. They're still paramilitary groups, not warring, but yeah, I mean, on an everyday basis, what's
And,
better?
right, and they've just lost one of the advantages of being affiliated with the UK, which is being part of the EU. So
Hmm. Yeah, I wonder. And they haven't worked that out yet with Northern Ireland, correct? Have they? Have they figured out?
I don't think so because, yeah, that was a major issue because of the freedom border
Yeah.
cross.
Can you imagine? So they all leave they Brexit, and then with Brexit, you mean hard borders again, right? And
Mhm.
so
Right.
you're going from this, oh, we get peace, in Northern Ireland, where you're just driving back and through borders, whatever. Of course, it's not perfect, but no military checkpoints, And
Right.
now, again, just because of Brexit, financial reasons mainly, bigotry mainly, they're going to put a border up between Northern Ireland and the Republic. I mean, who would have thought? That's one extreme,
Yeah. I mean,
crazy extreme. The other extreme is that they get reunited. Who would have thought that? Because then Northern Ireland might just say, they say at one point that the Catholic, that it has to come up for referendum, that one day they're going to be able to vote to stay with England or to UK or to go with the Republic, and the Catholics are going to majority. They say 2021, 2022. So
Yeah, that's right around the corner.
right around the corner. So it's crazy. So,
we should reconvene for another one of these if
if they,
Ireland is reunited.
yes. And if you see another book out there, and that's the thing, I think the best thing about me reading this book was, like I said, I had so much interest in it. It was so much a part of my life. And then honestly, for 20 years, almost 20 years, God, that makes me, but it kind of left because it just seemed like that story's over. And it's really,
Right.
it's not. For people that have not read it, most of you out there, I'll tell you, Ash, read a lot of nonfiction. I think there were 4 times in this book where I was like, oh shit. I mean, like where I was not ready for what came. Well, did you feel the same way?
Right. Yeah. There's not often one spoiler, much less many, when reading a work of nonfiction.
Yeah, there was like where I'm like, oh, no way. Oh, it was like almost reading fiction. And I think that's what made this book awesome. And I would tell people, don't go out there and Google this stuff. I didn't do that.
Oh shoot, I can't hear you, Mike. You were frozen.
Oh, you got me now? Let's see. There, let's see. How's that?
Sorry again. Rats.
No, it was me. I was frozen. Are we good?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well that just gives me then time to wrap it up, because who knows what's going to happen here. It was happening earlier. So thank you so much. You were awesome. You were perfect to talk to. My next book, I don't know if you've read this, but I lost the book cover, so I have to show you the inside.
Mike, sorry, you're frozen for me again.
Oh, there we go. The Hidden Life of Trees. Is that working? Let's see. Boom, boom. Yep. That working? Okay. We are having technical difficulties. You there? All right. Have you read The Hidden Life of Trees?
No, I haven't, but I saw it frozen on the screen. So
well, you should.
I figured you were probably talking about it.
No, I wasn't, because I was frozen too. But I'm going to be talking about that in 2 weeks. So check it out. It's a good one. It really is crazy good. It's not like not what you would expect. And you may have heard about his book. It is controversial. But the more I'm on my tree committee in Loveland, and the more I've been learning about it, it's really crazy, interesting stuff. So you there? You good?
I will tune in. You know, I don't know if I have a YouTube account, but I'll figure it out. So
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm losing you. Thank you so much.
It's frozen again.
You there?
Of course, my pleasure. Yeah, this was fun. Good chatting with Mike.
I might have you back.
That would be great. Yeah, let's do it again sometime.
Okay, we'll talk about a book, what we're going to do next.
Okay, sounds good. Cool.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.